Remember, your manager is not your friend. Do not get caught up in the gossip because they will immediately think they cannot trust you. Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a free resource for women who work in the sports and entertainment industry. Each week, we get real and talk about the things that hold us back and how we can overcome them and keep climbing to the top. And the top is however you define it. We talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Consider this podcast your secret weapon. You will learn from the best in the business and be able to take immediate action with all the advice that you hear. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake, a leadership development coach and consultant. I've worked in sports for 20 years. 15 of those years were spent working for the Red Sox, Dodgers, and the Cubs. After 15 years of working in the front office, I took a leap of faith and I started my own business. Friends, as a Black woman in sports, I know that the industry can take a toll on your confidence and sometimes leave you feeling defeated. Join me each week so I can support you on your journey. I promise you, each week you will feel stronger and more confident than the week before. So let's get started with this week's episode. When you have a new manager, it could take some time to get used to their style. I'm not talking solely about their managing style. While that is very important, I'm talking about all the things. For example, if you work in the events department, every event producer has a different style. The fundamentals are, usually similar, but their approach to creating an event is probably going to be different than your last manager. How they build relationships can be different. How they give you or your team or others feedback is going to definitely be different. How they receive feedback will be different. How and when they like to receive progress reports on what you're working on and what you're leading, that could be different, right? Your one-on-one meetings would be different. The type of boundaries they set are going to be different. For example, when my first boss with the Red Sox and Dodgers, he always did dinners. It was just very common to grab dinner during the day. He's in meetings, want to talk out a new project that we're working on, or you want to just have bonding time with your team. We got dinner. Luckily for me, it was usually free dinner. Now, when I went to the Cubs, I was working on a new project and the person I was reporting to was in meetings all day, hard to get on his calendar. So I said, why don't we and my thinking was, I need to get to know him better. And I have a ton of things I want to go over with him and get his input on. So I simply said, I remember it clear as day. I was standing in the hallway and I said, yes, okay, why don't we grab dinner? We can go over all of these things. And he immediately responded back with, why don't we do lunch? And I was like, oh, sure, no problem, whatever. I'll get some time on your calendar, and walked away. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, it was awkward because he's like, why would we get dinner together? And I couldn't understand why we wouldn't, right? But it was just a different manager and he had different boundaries. He went home to his family when work was done. He wasn't going out to dinner with his team. He wasn't going out to dinner with people who reported into him. Maybe he was going out to dinner with clients, but he had a boundary and he made me aware of that boundary. And I don't know if he thought it was awkward, but at that moment I laughed at myself because I was like, that was so awkward. The list goes on. It's so different for every manager that you report to. Over the next 10 minutes, I want to share 4 tips. That's it. 4 tips on how to adjust to reporting to a new manager. Now, I want to keep this short because I want you to be able to listen to this and put it into action immediately. And if you don't have a new manager, keep it in your back pocket for when you do, or when you're just working with someone new in general, right? You have a lot of dotted lines in organizations when you're working on projects, so you can use it for that as well. Consider these your quick tips. One last thing to keep in mind. As you're listening to these tips, you shouldn't feel the need to change who you are as you get used to working with a new manager. These tips are meant to help the transition go smoothly. Don't lose who you are in the process. No, ma'am. We do not have time for that. Don't lose yourself, but use these tips as a quick and easy way to transition into working with someone new, reporting to somebody new. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, let's do this. First tip, checking in and out. Now, I know this might seem strange if you normally don't do it. You're not on a clock, technically. I mean, I guess you really are, but you're not punching in and punching out of a clock. But checking in and out, it's just an easy way to connect with your manager in the morning and at the end of the day. Right? It's not showing what time you come into work. It could be after you put your stuff down. It could be 10 minutes after you get in. It could be an hour before you plan on leaving. But just popping your head in and saying good morning and getting that audience, getting that FaceTime with your manager helps because that sometimes they'll have something for you and they're like, ooh, let me, do you have a minute? Can I share this with you? It's just like getting extra time with your manager. Not every time they're going to have something for you, but just popping in. Hey, good morning. How are you? How was your evening? Just checking in, being polite, or stopping by their desk if they don't have an office, whatever. And at the end of the day, just also, hey, taking off for the night. If you're going to be online later, you can say something like, hey, taking off for the night. Have something I'm working on. So I'll be on later tonight from 7 to 9, trying to finish this if you need me to do anything. Oh, very simple. So he's like, oh, or she's like, oh, she's working on this project. Yes, I'm going to send you this if you're working on it. You don't have to, but if you plan to, I'm going to add something to it. It's a way to create dialogue. It's a way to get some one-on-one time with your manager that wasn't planned. It's a way for them to share things with you that they hadn't had a chance to share with you. Something new just came in. Say you had a meeting on a Monday and on Tuesday and today you're saying, hey, good night, talk to you, see you tomorrow, have a good night. Like, oh, something came up today that I wanted to share with you in a meeting that I just left. And then they can drop that knowledge on you, right? Because so often your manager gets so much information and they need to share it with you, but they don't always have the time. So when you make yourself available with the check-in, check-out strategy, we'll call it a strategy there. When you do that, you open up that dialogue. You open up yourself to being able to have conversations with them. Honestly, it's a good tip, whether it's a new manager or not, but definitely when you have a new manager, try that. I'll give you some examples here. I had the same client for the past 7 years. Now, the client wasn't able to be on site, so I had to work with that person's boss. Okay, cool. Not a problem. But I normally would never check in with the client who wasn't there. Like I normally would just I'd be on site with her. I'd get my work done. She knew what I was doing. There was no need for checking in and checking out. I had someone new. I thought, we don't normally work this closely together. We both respect each other's professional experience and we know that we're both good, but let me just pop my head in and see. And every single time I did, I would get new information. I've been waiting for that information all day, but I got it at the end of the day. Perfect. If I had waited, I wouldn't have gotten into maybe the end of the day, the next day, right? Or when that person had my client had time. So I got so much information by doing the check-in and check-out. I had a coaching client and she had a new job, new manager. She's putting in extra hours all these times. And we're talking. And I said, does your manager realize how much work you're putting in? I don't know. Is it an expectation that you do this? I'm not sure. All right. Well, why don't you say what you're doing? So we figured out a nice way to package that up and how to say it without making it seem like she was complaining about the extra work. It was more of a question of is this an expectation? And she realized she didn't need to be doing that. She didn't completely drop the extra hours, but she cut back drastically. Her personal life, her way of life outside of work changed drastically. So there was no more stress. There was no more working these late, ridiculous hours because she thought she had to in this new job. So checking in and checking out and setting expectations just leads to the next one is a great way to make sure that you adjust to a new manager and you guys can get used to working with each other very quickly, make the transition go very smoothly. Okay, the repeat. This is one of my favorite things to do. I have never stopped doing this. As soon as I learned this trick, I have not stopped doing this. Now, this is an easy one. When you are working with your new manager and you say, okay, let's use events as an example, and they say something to you, and there's some things that you have to read between the lines, and they're giving you a directive, and you feel like, okay, well, I guess that really means this. That right there, you want to say out loud. You want to repeat back. Okay, so what I hear you saying is boom, 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 boom. And that way the manager could hear it and say yes or no. I did it with a client this weekend and I repeated back what I thought I heard. And they said, no, that's not it. All right. And then they said it again and they said it differently. So it wasn't that I heard it incorrectly. They just didn't explain it in a way that made sense. In their head, it made sense. In my head, I heard something differently. So repeating back very quickly, and then you get used to, I know what my manager means when they say this. But when you first start working with somebody, if you don't know, you can't guess. When they're giving you a directive, they are taking something off their plate, giving it to you. It is now yours to own. You're accountable, but you have to know what you're doing. Right? You have to know what the expectation is. The repeat is a great place to align on expectations. So repeating what you believe you heard back and getting that yes or no. And if there's a no, they will repeat it again and say it usually differently. And then you can both be aligned on what you're doing. And if you need them to repeat it a third time, that is okay. asking questions and making sure you understand exactly what you need to be doing, because you're talking to a manager who you're like, wow, it sounds like you're speaking a different language. My last manager, it was so easy, but I bet you had to work to get to that easy part. So it's the same thing. So make sure you ask questions, raise concerns if you need to, do all those things. So don't become a yes woman. Or, I know that there are men listening to this episode or this podcast as well. Hey guys, don't become a yes man. Make sure that's the worst way. And when I say that, I'm talking to all the people pleasers out there or the recovering people pleasers. I'm one of those. Make sure that's not a good way to get your manager to like you or trust you or want to give you more work. Making sure that you're repeating and asking a ton of questions is going to make your manager believe and know that you're on top of it. When you give the yes, ma'am, or the yes, yeah, that makes sense, got it, and then walk away. No. Ask questions, do the repeat, make sure you guys are aligned. And also I touched on the expectations, make sure you're aligned on expectations as well. So things like if you're working on a project and, when you get, let's say, opening days coming up soon or opening night, depending on what sport you're in, and you guys are working later hours, it's a good time to just see what is expected of you and put it in the form of a question. That's all. Don't say, well, I guess this is a question. You can say, what time do you want me here tonight and to stay until? No. You can say, normally my team and I split up how we take on games. Let's use games, for example. We take up games. One person stays the entire game. One person leaves halfway through and one person leaves at the start of the game. Are you okay with us continuing to do that? So you have a plan. You're not making your manager make a plan. You have a plan. You're just making sure that they are aligned to it with you. So you're setting expectations. So it's up to you. If your manager is not setting them, the repeat and the asking lots of questions is a great opportunity for you to set those expectations. Number 3. So we talked about the check in and check out. We talked about the repeat / expectations. And then number 3 is a daily top 3. So you've heard me talk about a weekly top 3, but let's do a daily top 3. This is really critical when you have a new manager, especially if you have a new manager who loves to pop by and see what you're doing. They want to get used to your work style. So I know sometimes when my clients work on things, my friends work on things, when we're in the zone and someone comes over and interrupts us, 1, rude, but 2, when your manager comes over, well, you kind of have to just look up and say, hey, what's going on? You have to kind of answer their questions. And sometimes when you're in the zone, it's hard to think about all the other things that you have going on. But if you have a daily top 3, if you check in with yourself in the morning, all right, what am I working on today? What's the priority? What's on deck? Where am I stuck? Right? Or what's 2 things on deck? So that gives you your 3, right? Whatever it is, come up with a daily 3 and just make sure you just have those top of mind. So when someone does ask you, oh, what are you up to? What are you working on? You can just say, oh, right now, the priority is this. And then on deck, as soon as I finish this, me and the team are going to start tackling XYZ. And after that, we're going to either pick boom. And you can actually ask them for their feedback. Be like, which one do you think is a priority? You can involve them in the process. Have a daily top 3 because that's going to help your manager understand all the work that you're doing. So don't just say what you're working on at that very moment. Have 3 things that you're working on, just top of mind that you can talk about. It helps you when it comes to advocating for yourself. It's a form of self-advocacy. So make sure every morning I'm telling you, it will take 2 minutes and you will feel super organized for the day because not only do you have your daily top 3 that you can use when you're talking to your manager, if they do the pop-in, but you can also, you'll be organized. You're like, oh, this is my priority today. This gets done after that. And this gets done when when I can check this off my list. Like, okay, I'm organized. I have my 3 priorities for the day. No more than 3 priorities in a day. Okay, last one. This one's fun. Know when to socialize and know when to keep it business. So one thing when you're getting used to a new manager, like you want to get to know who you're working for. You want to talk about things that are outside of work. And sometimes people don't. And if you don't, then just maybe you can end the episode and that's fine. Some people don't like to socialize at work. My husband's one of them. I respect people who are like that. I will chit chat for days. I can't help it. I am a relationship person. I love connection is one of my values. Like I love getting to know people beyond work. I don't know how not to do it. I don't know how to turn it off. However, when you're getting to know a new manager, yes, it's important to how's the family, how are they adjusting to your new job, whatever. those kind of conversations. It's okay to have those, but don't make it the only thing, right? You have to know when to turn it off and when to turn it on. One thing I do is I turn it on. I kind of mirror my manager and I get used to them. I turn it on when they turn it on. Like, okay, they want to talk. I'm ready. Now, again, if you don't want to talk about like things outside of work, that's okay. I'm not going to tell you that you have to, but it's a great way to get to know somebody. You don't have to share a ton of stuff about yourself if that's not you. But when somebody wants to like switch gears and chit chat with me, oh, it's on. Like they usually I have to remind myself like, okay, slow it down. I'm very good at reading social cues. So I know when they're starting to get like, all right, enough of this chit chat, let's get back to work. And I will pick up on that and then get back to work. So know when to socialize and know when to keep it all business. Your manager, in most cases, although I manage some of my friends, some of my best friends, but for most cases, your manager is not your friend. So when you are socializing, careful of things that you talk about. Don't talk about other people because your manager is going to think that they can't trust you. If your manager starts to talk about other people, it's okay to just be like, how I've handled it is when a manager starts to talk poorly about a coworker or about somebody, I just ask questions. Oh, what happened? Right. So I kind of like I reserve all judgment and I try not to get caught up in the gossiping because what happens is no matter what, it gets back to somebody. So asking the questions and playing neutral and not sharing your opinion and trying to steer the conversation elsewhere helps. It's not a bonding moment because what happens is when you start to listen to your manager talk about other people, what I've seen from my coaching clients is they start to get insecure because they think that their manager is doing the same about them. So don't use that as a bonding moment. That's not a good one. When you're socializing, just keep it healthy, keep it fun, keep it light. It is not a gossip session. Your manager, in most cases, is not your friends. All of my clients, none of my clients have had a friend for a manager. They're not your friend. Having connection with them is important. Learning about things about them outside of work and sharing what you're comfortable sharing with about your personal life is great. But remember, your manager is not your friend. Do not get caught up in the gossip because they will immediately think they cannot trust you. And if they're doing it to you, it's okay to ask them to stop. Be like, oh, I don't want to gossip. That's not my thing. You could say that as well. All right, my friends, 4 easy tips. As I promised, I might have went over 10 minutes because I got excited to share these with you. Please try them out and send me a message. If it works or you need like an extra tip, like I tried this and this is what happened. What should I do next? Send me a DM. Let's chat, or you can send me a message on LinkedIn, a DM on Instagram. Either way, you know how to get in touch with me. And if you don't, scroll down in the show notes and all of my information is there for you. All right, friends, until next week.